Have you been struggling to figure out what your creative inner self is? Because I think a lot of people do, and you're not alone in that, and it takes time to get there. If you're making art that feels in some way inauthentic or doesn't feel like you, I think most artists have been there, most creators have been there. Thought I could share a little bit about my journey in finding my niche and how maybe that could help you. Hey YouTube, my name is Julia. I am a silversmith based in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm here to share a little bit about my experience as becoming a jeweler and a creative and all the things that you can do and avoid and all that jazz to get where I am now. Where I am now is not the finish line. I'm nowhere close to the finish line. I don't even know if there is a finish line, but we're going to figure that out together. Let's start with a little bit of background. I've been pretty much a creative since middle school. I was always super into art classes. In high school, I pretty much was in every extracurricular activity that revolved around art, from sign painting to president of art club to graphic design, photography, independent study, arts competition where we made fashion out of paper, and yeah, just so many more. It was quite ridiculous. Yearbook design. I don't know. I could keep going. I'll think of them more. Then I went to college for marketing. Why is that? Because I knew that finding a job in the arts is very difficult, and I knew I had skills and passion for business, and that was kind of still a part of who I was, and it still felt authentic in some way. I viewed marketing as the creative side of business. I still think that holds true a little bit. I do think that you can niche down a little bit more into graphic design or things in those little creative pockets, whether you're a copywriter or a videographer or whatever. So during college, I mostly focused on my studies and I also focused mostly on working and meeting friends and having fun. I was not invested in my art at that point in time. I would do little blips of art, like in my sophomore year of college. I did a face a day challenge for 19 days, but that was really fun for me. I got to explore with my Wacom tablet for the first time, where I was able to draw on the tablet and see it on the screen. That was really cool, but I just felt like that wasn't quite what I was looking for. I also had been given an iPad as a hand me down, and so I explored a little bit with digital art, and I definitely played around a bit during college, but nothing that serious up until I graduated college. So fast forward to graduation 4 years later, I met a really cool couple through my job, which we'll get back to, but they happened to have an art studio and they were producers in LA, living in Florida, where I went to college. And they were often in LA for work 85% of the time. So they had this massive, I think it was like a 500 square foot. Honestly, it may have been bigger. It was a very large art studio. For being an art studio, it was huge. But they had a art studio that they hardly used. They would just use it when they were in town. They were looking for someone to sublease it. I was like, hey, I have no money. I just graduated college. It was around 2020 that I graduated college, so maybe like a year later, this happened, and I hadn't like really found a career job or anything yet. So they were super kind to let me pay what I could for that studio. I think we agreed on 200 a month, which was amazing. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a real artist now. I have an art studio. Like, that's so cool. But then I felt this weight on my shoulders because in high school, I really loved to make realism drawings. I really liked to do portraits of people, and oftentimes in pencil and paper, I would just draw a face. A lot of the time, it was celebrities. I was really into One Direction. I was really into Bournes. I was really into pretty much any man with long hair, like Harry Styles and James Bay. That was kind of my jam. And Lord, love Lord. And yeah, so those were the main people that my art would be of. Once I was at this point where I had an art studio, I knew I was still creative. I still knew that I like to do portraits the most out of anything, but I was like, man, doing drawing in a studio doesn't feel like real art to me, or doing a pencil drawing in the studio doesn't feel like real art to me, which is actually kind of funny because one of the pencil drawings I did in that studio ended up being one of my favorite pieces I produced over the course of the next, I believe, 3 or 4 years of me being in that studio. I decided that I needed to get canvases and explore with painting. I did a lot of mixed media and kind of like abstract takes on portraits. I used a lot of graffiti in my pieces. Although they were fun and they were exploratory, I made probably about 3 or 4 pieces that I actually genuinely really like to this day. Throughout those few years of being in that studio, I just never felt like that art was me. I always felt like I've kind of now identified with this certain style, but this style still doesn't feel like who I am as an artist, and I don't feel satisfied with it. I feel like it's not really speaking to who I am. And I also felt like the art I was producing didn't require the technical skill that my drawings did, and in some way that made me feel like a lesser artist. Which I knew wasn't true, and I still was using skill in my composition and my techniques and all of that. But if you were looking at it straight on, you would say, oh, this looks a lot less experienced than somebody who's doing a very detailed portrait of a person. Let's rewind to that job where I met this couple. So in college, I worked at the Museum of Fine Arts in St. Petersburg for all 4 years of college. I loved that job dearly. I was there part time, had the best boss in the world, super fun, but I just knew that that was not my life. I didn't want to necessarily stay in museums, which is funny because I did continue to work in museums after that. I just kind of knew that that was more of a college job and just something that would be really good for that point in time for me. So, as I said, I graduated in May of 2020, which was peak COVID time. Just before that, I had started a job at a fine jewelry store, super part time. And I was doing kind of marketing and inventory and sales. Like, I was kind of just like a mixture of all of it for them. And it was really fun. Once they reopened from COVID, continued to work there as I was trying to find kind of what I wanted to do precisely after college. I did kind of have a job lined up with a marketing agency that I was interviewing for in probably like April of 2020. And then, of course, that job fell through. So I was super bummed about that because I thought I was on this path to like do the corporate marketing thing and I was going to be set and that I was going to just start my career and it would be super easy because I went to college and I deserved that. Not true. I think a lot of people who have graduated college knows that that's not true. But I was still young and, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, so that's fine. But I continued to work at this jewelry store. I think I was almost full-time. I grew to really like that job. I grew to realize that, I kind of have a passion about gemstones and that I like to geek out with my coworkers and with my boss. And that it was just really cool to be around such a creative process of something that's so detailed and seems so crazy that people can produce right there in front of me when I think that it has to be in some big fancy factory. Not that that place wasn't fancy because it was, but I don't know, I was kind of just amazed. Briefly, I worked with a coworker who's still a friend of mine, but I knew that jewelry was her passion, and I think that subconsciously I said, hey, that's her thing. I can't take her thing, so I will probably never be a jeweler. And I kind of just closed that book. And eventually, I went to do some freelance marketing jobs and some other stuff, worked for a few marketing roles at companies, and kind of just like closed the chapter on jewelry after that because I was like, well, that's not really my thing specifically. A few years later, I moved to Asheville with my boyfriend. I think I was just talking about jewelry kind of nonstop, talking about gemstones. He always likes to pick my brain about my jewelry knowledge, which I really appreciate because he doesn't mind me geeking out for a while about it. But I think that he knew that I kind of had this underlying passion for jewelry. And I was actually at my day job at a museum and I was like, man, like, I wonder if there's just like a jewelry class that I could take locally. And so I looked it up online. There was a few studios. One of them, Torch, had classes that were available with my kind of weird work schedule working at the museum because I didn't have weekends off there. I would work weekends and have off weekdays. They had a class that worked for me, and that was lost wax casting, which I thought was really cool because I knew that the jewelry studio I had previously worked in did lost wax casting, and those were always their most insane pieces when they did them in-house lost wax casting style. Super cool stuff. I knew that they would carve some by hand or they would do CAD or whatever, but I was like, that seems like a really good intro. I believe it was a 5-week course. It was 4 hours a day over 5 weeks, I think, for 1 day a week. So it wasn't like full 5-week thing. But I learned a lot during that and I just felt the spark. I was like, oh, dang, this is really cool. And I could show you the pieces that I made from that class. I think I just was like, all right, let's keep going with this. So I signed up for a membership with that studio. Initially, I just had access to use it during open studio hours, which was really hard with my work schedule, but I had got to talk to the owners more and let them know, hey, it would be super awesome if I could come here in the evening when y'all are closed, if you would trust me enough with that. And they were only open for about a year at that point, I think under a year. And they were like, we have another member who has the same issue. Let's explore that. Let's see what that looks like. So they did end up making a full access membership available for people that they knew and trusted and had been working in the studio for a while and knew the tools and all of that. So I got that full access membership and I just went all in on jewelry making. I was like, I think this is my jam. Through that, I continued creating and they were able to offer me help here and there and some guidance. But I was kind of, what do I do with this now? I had started a brand, started a website, all that, but I was like, let's figure out how to navigate this. If you don't know, in September of 2024, Asheville was hit by a hurricane so randomly, Hurricane Helene, and it devastated our community. I was fortunate enough to leave Asheville before the storm, just a mixture of gut instinct and seeing what was already unfolding before we actually got hit. I was displaced to Charlotte for I think about 4 months or so. Don't quote me on that, but I was in Charlotte for a while. I was still working a job at a museum here, and so I was driving back. I was staying with friends. I would work in the studio during that time and just use that as an outlet for me when everything was crazy. So when I'd come to work, I would sometimes spend the whole evening working on jewelry just to have something to do while I was here. And at that point in time, I really wanted to move to Chicago. Both my partner and I really wanted to move to Chicago. And we were looking for jobs. I'd applied to over 200 jobs in Chicago, which was a lot. And I had a few interviews. Some of them went well, some of them didn't. Some people ghosted me, some people found other people. Whatever the deal was, it was a lot harder than I expected to find a corporate job in Chicago. And the very last time that I was at the studio, Meredith, one of the owners, said, "Man, I wish you weren't moving to Chicago because I would love for you to be an apprentice here." And I was just like, that would be so cool. That would be amazing. And it's so cool that I've become friends with the owners and that it seems like I've built this community and this relationship here, and I don't really want to leave that behind. So, went back to Charlotte, talked to my boyfriend. We considered a few things about his situation, my situation, and that ultimately decided that moving back to Asheville actually would be the best thing for us. So, now, fast forward to now, I am an apprentice at the studio. I was doing work trade for a while and they were giving me some free classes in return and studio access, but they have officially launched a apprenticeship program with me and 2 other people. And we are all kind of beginner jewelers who are learning under them in exchange for work helping the studio. And they're doing things to help make that sustainable, to help make that eventually a paid apprenticeship. But I'm really excited about that, and so that's where I am. As of right now, I have participated in craft fairs across the entire US, most of the US, like half of the US. I've participated in fairs in Chicago, New York, I was gonna say Brooklyn, that is New York, Nashville, here in Asheville, North Carolina. I've had my pieces in shops in Chicago, also in South Carolina, and I'm looking to keep doing that and keep exploring and expanding. But I think I've realized through all of this to say that my creative identity wasn't something that I found right in front of my face. It took me a lot of time to realize what that was and to realize as I matured and grew what I was actually passionate about. And I think that it's okay to feel like you're stagnant or feel like you're doing something that's not true to yourself because eventually I hope that you will feel like the path kind of becomes clear. I think that when it becomes clear, it's just like in relationships, sometimes people say, when you know, like if you know you met the right person, then you probably met the right person. I feel like it's the same with finding your niche in the creative world. Like once you do, you're like, this feels right. Not to say that it won't change over time and it won't change shape and style and, it won't totally evolve and different, but I do think that at its core, it may be the same thing and will always kind of stem from forward. So that's a little bit about my journey. I would love to hear about what you make below, and this is my video. So if you want to subscribe to me, that would be really cool. That feels so silly to say, but like, subscribe, comment, all of the above or below, depending on where you're looking at this. I am in my yard. This is my first video, so maybe you'll join the journey with me and I'll have a space one day that you can check out. But for now, this is my yard. Welcome to my yard. And yeah, thanks for kind of coming time, I suppose. I hope that maybe you got some helpful things out of that. I know that it's not an easy process to be a creative, and although it looks very pretty and shiny and cool, especially when you see it on the internet, it's usually a lot more rough than it looks. So, best of luck with your creative journey. If I can help you, comment. And lastly, I would like to plug my Discord community chat fair. This is something I created to help people who are in craft fairs or do craft fairs, anything like that, kind of nationally or on a higher and I specifically get with the concept of being able to carpool, couch surf, share hotels, share travel expenses, get together, show, grab drinks, grab food, whatever. It was kind of just this feeling of like I was doing craft fairs all across the country and then being like, dang, I really wish I knew some people. I had some people to hang out with. I had some people that could go in on these expenses with me. So I created, which is basically for that. You can find open applications on there. You can discuss what certain craft fairs are like, things like that. I'll put the link down in the description for you. But yeah, if you want, feel free to join that community. We're small right now, but I'm hoping to grow that. I did print out some business cards recently, so I'm just trying to get the word out there and get some artists in so that way the community can do what the community is supposed to do, which is just help each other. We do have a few very active members who have been fantastic, just sharing all the information and resources that they can. So yeah, we'd love to have you. But thanks for listening and watching, and all right, I did the thing. Cool.